Is the position of the South African Police Commissioner a poisoned chalice? What economic implications would be attached to South Africa if the National Police Commissioner Kgomotso Phahlane is found guilty of breaking the law? You're watching the Moneymakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield. Tonight I'm talking about why the position of South African Police Commissioner seems almost to be that poisoned chalice ever since Jackie Salibi, Ria Piercha, and now seemingly with the investigation into Kgomotso Phahlane. I'm joined by forensic investigator Paul Sullivan, who opened a case in January 2016 raising red flags that the bond Police Commissioner Phahlane had registered was lower than the value of his house. And when he smells a rat, he's usually right, because you did bust open the scandal around Jackie Salibi. You saw him convicted. He went to jail. He subsequently died out of jail. But this idea of police commissioners being tainted is tragically a pattern.
Well, I think, Bruce, the problem is not the commissioners that are tainted, which they obviously are. It's the process to appoint them. And if we go back to Jackie Salibi as an example, there were already evidence on the file from 1998 or 97 that he was caught driving around in a stolen BMW. And when he was interviewed by the police, and he was then Director General of what was then called Foreign Affairs, and he made the excuse that he bought it from a friend in Soweto. And when that person was tracked down, it was a chop shop. So when you've got a guy who's buying cars from chop shops who becomes a commissioner of police, you can just figure out for yourself what's going on there.
In South Africa today, though, is it possible to find anybody in public office who's not going to have some mud thrown at them by somebody who doesn't like them very much or doesn't like some kind of action? I can make an allegation against anybody I like. It doesn't have to be factual in the poisonous environment in which we live.
No, I hear you, Bruce, but the difference is throwing mud and having the mud stick. And in the case of Salibi, the mud stuck, and in the case of Phahlane, I can assure you it will stick. Now, I don't take these cases on and make allegations of this nature unless the homework has been done. In this case, the homework has been done. Now, I'm not going into the merits of the case. The fact of the matter is, the minister himself had received formal complaints in 2012 and 2013 already about the conduct of this man, which linked him to a nefarious relationship with the supplier of the forensic materials, if you like, that are supplied to the police department. Now, the minister, notwithstanding that serious complaint and notwithstanding an in-depth forensic investigation that Piercha ordered, Piercha got the results of that forensic investigation, which she must have shared with the minister, which clearly painted a picture of things not being right. And what happens? She gets suspended, and the guy with a cloud over his head gets her job. It's wrong.
Now, when we look at your actions and why you're pursuing these actions, what is your motivation as Paul Sullivan?
Well, it's very simply this, Bruce. I like this country. I've been there 3 decades now. I put my roots down here. Jackie Salibi called me a spy. These people are calling me a spy without any substance to these stupid allegations whatsoever. I've served in the police in this country, and I didn't get paid for that. I was a police reservist. I got shot on duty. I put my blood in the gutters in this country, and I will not stand by and watch this country, my home, go down the tubes because of a handful of corrupt people. If you look at the South African Police Service, there's 100 and something thousand men and women. I would say at least 80 to 90% of which are good, rock-solid, hard-working people with their hearts in the right places. I know this because I work with them week in, week out, and they put their lives on the line. And the problem is, the management of the police, they are rotten to the core.
Now, that's a big allegation, and it's one that you maintain that you can back up with physical evidence, which you're not prepared to share because it's part of a process with IPID, the Independent Police Investigative Directorate.
Yes.
You've actually got a docket which you've handed directly to Robert McBride or to people who work with him?
I opened the docket in January this year. Now, at that time, Robert McBride was suspended. Okay? Now, without blowing the lid off what's coming, there's a report being presented soon, probably next week, a very serious report. This report is going to implicate certain people in certain things, and when that's made public next week, the whole country will realize that this is a lot more than criminals infiltrating the criminal justice system. This is really a much bigger story.
What is the origin of the report? Can you tell me that?
It's a report that I've been researching for some time.
So it's your report.
And it's a factual report with evidence. And when that report is put on the table in front of the whole country will see that we have a serious illness in our criminal justice system that needs to be fixed.
How do you prosecute something like that in a corrupt system? You trust in the integrity of IPID to do it?
Well, yes, now we can, but we couldn't a year ago. When I laid this complaint, Phahlane gets a copy of the docket. I mean, that's a criminal offence, and I've laid charges against the person that gave it to him. Now, how can you, when you have all the mice guarding the cheese, expect to open the cupboard and find that it's still full? And that's what's going on now. So you end up in this superficial world in which we're living at the moment, where people like Dramat, an honest and true man, is charged with fraud. We get people like Sabir, who's hounded out of his job, along with Dramat. There was a preconceived idea in getting rid of those people. We get people like Robert McBride and people that worked for him, all suspended, some of them dismissed, unlawfully dismissed. And then through that process, they get charged with fraud. Robert McBride gets his job back, and 2 weeks later, the National Prosecuting Authority withdraw charges because they never had a case in the first place. We get a situation where General Sabir, who was fired from his job, was charged with fraud. He arrives in court, and the case withdraw the charges, and they admit that they were instructed to charge him even though they knew they haven't got a case.
What was the circumstances of your arrest at OR Tambo International Airport this year? You had two passports. You got an Irish passport and a South African passport.
And
you were hauled off a flight.
I'm entitled to have multiple passports. There's no law in this country. You can have 10 passports if you want, providing they're all obtained lawfully. And I obtained my passports lawfully. I opened a docket against Phahlane in earlier in the year. Okay. Last year and the year before, I opened multiple dockets against another person, Lieutenant General Vinesh Munu, and I alleged a corrupt relationship. And I alleged that the people that he had that corrupt relationship with are criminals with associations with people that are near and dear to our president. And when I laid all that on the line, clearly nobody was intent on investigating this. Why not? Dramat was investigating these allegations. He got suspended. Sabir was assisting Dramat in investigating these allegations. He got suspended. I then went to McBride and I explained what was going on here, and I gave him a substantial docket involving Munu and Kgomotso and others. So he started making the investigations and he got suspended. So what you have actually seen over here is a protection racket. So bring it forward now to March of this year. I sent an email on the 15th of March, and I addressed that email to the head of the Hawks, the spokesman for the head of the Hawks. I addressed it to Phahlane, and I addressed it to the head of crime intelligence, and I addressed it to a number of other people, and I addressed it to some politicians and some journalists. And in that email, I tell them that the criminal justice system has been taken over by criminals. And I give a few examples. And I say, in respect of Phahlane, our acting commissioner of police, there's a picture of his house. Let him come out and tell us where the money came from to buy that house.
It's a lovely house.
It's a beautiful house.
Many of us would kill to live in a house.
And I earn a lot more than Phahlane, and I can't afford to live in a house like that.
Who funds Paul O'Sullivan?
I'm a businessman. I fund myself.
Well, doing what?
Well, that's private. I don't ask you. No, I'm not paid by the taxpayer.
No, but this is what's important here is your credentials.
My credentials are rock solid.
But as a forensic investigator, that is your business.
I run a business, which is a forensic consultancy business. Before these turkeys started their action, I was making 8 million rand a year. Okay, when I say making, my sales were 8 million rand a year. After all my expenses and everything were taken away, I made a conscious decision to plough 3 million rand a year into paying my staff to carry out pro bono work. And we selected our cases very carefully. Those cases included the likes of Radovan Krejcir, the George Barkhuizen arrest following the murder of his wife. We investigated other cases, but most of the cases we investigated were serious public interest cases where the police had either failed to come to the party or where the police were involved in the crimes themselves. And that has made me very unpopular with dirty police officers. The rest of the police like what I'm doing, and I work very well with them. So you have this situation where on top of that, I have property businesses, and my property businesses stretch globally. I'm the CEO of a public company in London, and we have interests in different parts of the world. I'm not at liberty, I'm not obliged to explain that, but I take the profits from that and I put it into making the world a better place to live in, because I'm involved in other activities in other parts of the world. I have an office in Nairobi. I have an office in London.
What is the next phase? The next phase is the report that you will table next week, in which you will detail allegations against senior people.
Yes.
The complaint with IPID is where?
It's still being investigated, and I'm delighted to say they have already found prima facie evidence. I'm not going into what the evidence is, but I'm content that under the current leadership of IPID, IPID is the only dog with teeth left in the criminal justice system.
Are you sleeping with one eye open at night?
No, not at all. I haven't broken any laws. If they want to climb over my wall, they'll get what I've been trained to deal with. So, and I think they know that. They threatened to kill me on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, no, you got a call.
No, I didn't get a call. They sent me an SMS, okay, and a very verbose SMS. And I sent that SMS because I know it came from one of Phahlane's people. I sent it to him and I said, here, look at that. And I explained to him why I know that he was behind it. And I haven't had a response, which means he's guilty. So I think at the end of the day, we will see some radical changes coming now. I don't know what's happening today in the High Court, but I believe there's some actions going on there. I do know that the week after next in the High Court, on the 6th and 7th of December, there will be argument on behalf of the Helen Suzman Foundation and Freedom Under Law in respect of the head of the Hawks. Now, if you've got a head of a Hawks and a head of a police, where the public and entities and NGOs have no confidence in them, surely the President should say, let me appoint somebody, instead of appointing somebody that's going to look after my back on my 783 charges, let me appoint somebody that's going to do the job properly. He can't do that right now because his hands are dirty. He can't appoint the right people for the job because they might come knocking on his door and put handcuffs on him. And I think that's the problem we face in this country.
Is that at the core of it?
That's at the core of it.
Paula
and
Sullivan,
not just about the police, but the whole criminal justice system.
We must leave it there. Paul O'Sullivan, thank you very much for coming in. Forensic investigator Paul O'Sullivan will keep very, very close tabs, of course, on this particular story. Thank you so much for watching this evening. Thank you for joining us on the Moneymakers. Good night.